All right. Happy Monday, everybody. I'm Sean from RPH Ally. We have Derek from PharmD Financial Planning and a big partner for us at RPH Ally. And we're going to dive into some business topics today for pharmacy or business owners, either or. So kind of an extension of the topic last week where we dove into, what was it, expenses and when you can write stuff off, that sort of thing. And then it's
Yep.
like, okay, yeah.
What can you
Anyways,
deduct as a business owner?
yes, thank you, Derek. So, anyways, enough talking by me. Let's get into what Derek wants to talk about today, which is very, it's going to hit home for a lot of pharmacists, especially launching their own consulting practices now, not having a W-2 job. So, lots of couple topics here. So, go ahead, Derek, and kick us off.
Yeah. So I just want to first say I've noticed that in the last 12 to 18 months, the world of pharmacy has really started to transition into entrepreneurship. And that has meant that a lot of pharmacists who have been used to receiving W-2 wages from a big corporation or a family pharmacy now are going to experience something they have never experienced before and probably never thought they would experience while they were going through pharmacy school. And that is becoming a business owner. And I think when you go down this path, there are two important things you're going to want to be aware of. And those two important things are what I'm hoping to talk about today on this live. And that is making sure that your annual cash flow is planned out and the importance of your estimated tax payments.
Awesome. Let's start with the first one.
So annual cash flow planning is extremely important because it gives you a benchmark you can use to make proactive and smart financial decisions. So when you become a business owner, whether you're doing consulting or something else, having just a vague idea of what you think you're going to bring in that year in gross receipts or gross revenue is really, really important, because then you can start making decisions off of that. Like, how much am I going to pay myself? How much, if I do pay myself X amount, will remain in reserve? How big of a reserve count do I need? What other expenses could come along that I'm not accounting for now that I need extra dollars in any given month to go toward? And on and on and on. And having that plan in mind at the very beginning is going to allow you to make sound financial decisions throughout the entirety of the year.
Okay, I have a couple questions for you, Derek. Forgive me on how basic these may be. So first off, there's a lot of, I love what you said there about like pharmacy and how like the last 12 to 18 months you've seen that kind of shift, which is amazing, because pharmacists really need to get more into that consulting space, working for themselves, taking care of their patients. Love that. Starting out, it's not easy, right? So how do you estimate when you're growing your business? It always takes a little longer than you expected to start, really scaling the way you foresaw when you envisioned this in your head. So can you speak to that a little bit? How do you estimate that when you're still, or how do you put a map and plan out as you're growing?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I always recommend that you just sit down, whether it's pencil or paper or in an Excel spreadsheet or some other tool, and just estimate what you think you're going to bring in at certain times during the year. And I would always recommend being far more conservative than to get more aggressive in your estimates, because if there's extra money earned that you didn't anticipate, well, that's just a cherry on top. And really, my opinion is that you should have somewhat of an idea of what you're going to bring in before you even start your business. If you're going off into the world of entrepreneurship and you have no idea what type of revenue you can even expect, that tells me that more planning should go into the business side before you actually launch and move forward with it. And there are easy ways where you can get a better idea of what you might bring in by talking to other people who've gone through a very similar situation that you're about to go through, and map your first or second or third year in the business off of what they previously did. And if worst case scenario hits, hopefully your planning was more on the conservative side and you have enough in reserve to get you by. And if things start to click and you start earning more money than you anticipated, then you can either take those dollars and fill up your emergency reserve account or invest that money back into the business to hopefully continue to accelerate that growth.
That was solid gold right there, Derek. I even forgot my second question because I was just laughing at myself jumping into RPH Ally without having any of that stuff taken care of as far as, anyway, sorry. But no, that's perfect. What was my second question, Derek? That was amazing. Just like have that plan and mapped out before you even jump into that. I know, like, one of my favorite stories is Jamie Wilkie's, how she actually built her business and then she was able to cut the ties with her W-2 job and just go, right? So Lots of planning going on when you're building this business. If I think of it, I'll come back to it, but let's dive into the tax prep.
Yeah. So one of the things you're going to want to be aware of, and this gets a lot of business owners within their first year of business, is you have to make tax payments as you go throughout the year in quarterly installments. And a lot of pharmacists, again, who are used to working W-2 jobs, are just used to having those tax payments made for them, or those estimated tax payments paid for them out of each paycheck they receive every other month, monthly, or however often you get paid. But as a business owner, there's nobody behind you doing that for you anymore. So there are 4 important dates you have to remember. The first one is in 2023, I believe it's April 18th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 17th of 2024. Those are the due dates of when you have to make your quarterly estimated tax payments. And that's where, as a business owner, mapping out what you think your revenue is going to be throughout the year can come back and be very beneficial in determining what quarterly tax payment you should make that quarter before that due date hits. Because if you don't make those quarterly payments on time, you end up owing an underpayment penalty at the end of the year when you go and file your taxes. So those quarterly payments are extremely important. And I know a lot of pharmacists out there listening to this go, well, how am I supposed to keep an eye track of that or remember all that? Well, the IRS knows that that's a hard timeline to follow because your attention is probably on growing your business and helping your patients. So there are safe harbor rules that are put in place where the IRS wants you to pay at least 90% of your taxes due that year throughout the year. So if you meet that 90% threshold, you're good. If you pay 100% of what you made last year or of what you owed in taxes in the previous year, you'll hit a safe harbor limit and you won't owe any penalties at the end of the year. If your adjusted gross income as a married couple is over $150,000, you have to pay in 110% of what you owed in taxes in the previous year. So if you can hit any one of those 3 safe harbor rules, regardless of how much money you make, you won't receive a penalty at the end of the year. So that's another way you could potentially get around or lessen the burden of making those quarterly payments every single quarter throughout the year.
It's fascinating and sounds like a lot to keep
Yes.
track of. Well, that's why, honestly, I'm going to tell a quick story of like when we first started. We first started talking years ago, but when I said, Derek, I need your help, because it was right when I came off of my W-2 job and we started rolling as an entrepreneur, and you helped me do this like before the end of last year, which actually ended up saving me money because I thought I needed to pay more, but I didn't. Right. So that's where it's like your own financial advisor comes in really handy on times like this, because I mean, you saved me probably, from pulling out a couple $1,000, and I was like, okay, no, wait, you looked back and said, nope, Sean, you're fine. Just carry on, which was awesome. So thanks, Derek, for that help. Appreciate that.
And then one more point on the estimated tax payments too. If you find yourself entering the end of the year and you go, holy cow, I forgot to make my estimated tax payments. How can I meet the requirements in order to not be penalized at the end of the year? There are a few other things you can do in the planning realm that the IRS accepts if your financial situation is set up appropriately enough, where you can use like IRAs and other account types to help fill that void if you didn't keep up with your quarterly taxes. So just know if you haven't done it and you're getting toward the end of the year, there may be some outlets to help solve any situations you run into like that.
Fascinating. Yeah, because that was another route that we were discussing last fall, and thankfully we didn't have to do that. So that was good. Perfect, Eric. Now, thanks, Kevin, for dropping that question. This goes back to the first topic that we were talking about. How do you do it if it has not been done before? And I'm thinking about, I think where Kevin was going with this was on, if you've never laid out this first strategy, then you're a first-time entrepreneur, first-time business owner, like how do you kind of map that out for planning your, what you need to keep, what you need to like store in reserves, that sort of thing?
I think, and there could be 100 different answers to this. I will say personally, my preference is it starts with personal expenses, where you need to have your personal expenses down and organized and understood before you can move on to the business planning side of it. Because for most entrepreneurs, they end up going broke, not because they can't do a good enough job. It's because their personal expenses end out overtaking what they can afford to pull out of their business in those first couple of years. and they just financially can't make it work. So understanding what your personal expenses are is number one, because then you can understand what type of salary you need to pull from your business or what type of cash flow you need to pull from your business and income. And then you understand what your income requirements are. Then you can overlay that with what gross revenue do you need in order to meet those income requirements, and then subtract out the common expenses you know you're going to have throughout the year. And that should lay the framework of what you need in that year, what income you need, and what potential expenses you can afford to have. And then from there, you can drill down into more detail and figure out the nitty gritty, depending on what type of business you're trying to operate.
Amazing. It's good stuff.
And then make sure as you continue to progress in your business, keep good books and records. Get a QuickBooks subscription or create some sweet Excel spreadsheet or something like that and track what you're bringing in, track where your expenses go, categorize that so you actually have data you can go back to in any given month and analyze that specific situation, because it's going to allow you to make smart decisions and proactive decisions moving forward as your business continues to grow without hitting that liquidity crunch that a lot of new businesses end up experiencing within those first couple of years of being in business.
Fascinating. Good stuff, Derek. What? No, I'm just gonna let you keep going. This is good.
Yeah. So again, annual cash flow plan that should be done, I would say, in the first month of the year. Should actually start planning that in December of the previous year, using the recent year's figures that you get from your books and records. Then you can prorate that out into the future. Understanding that you have to make tax payments throughout the year. So having that in your annual cash flow plan is extremely important. And then any leftover cash, this is where being a business owner can make or break you, is you can save that and invest it in yourself, and invest it in a savings account or a brokerage account, or you can try to take that money and reinvest it in the business and get some of the benefits like those deductions we talked about last time. And that's right there where I think a lot of business owners separate from a business ownership standpoint, is making that decision whether to reinvest or to build liquidity for any future events. And that's all on an as needed basis, depending on where you're at financially and what business you're in. So it gets really complex, but the more complex it gets, it means you're doing something right. And it probably means you're growing, and your future is probably better off than where you're currently at right now, which is all good things.
It's amazing, Derek. Thank you so much for joining us today. For all of the entrepreneurs out there, pharmacists that want to launch your own business, hop on over RPH Ally and join Derek's channel. I mean, he gives all of his information away for free. So
I'm an open book. Ask away. I'm happy to answer and help any way I can.
Yes, awesome. All right, we'll see you next Monday. We'll probably continue the conversation with business. All right, Derek?
Sounds good. Looking forward to it, Sean. Thank you.